Hi guys, I'm a big fan of Aaron Bastani, but I think he's wrong in his assessment of what's currently happening with the Labour government at the moment. In this clip, the founder of Novara Media explains how Liberals have ended up with egg on their face over their support for Labour in general and Starmer in particular before the general election. Everything Aaron says here is right, but I believe the problem is much more profound than what the media are saying about political parties.
And I wonder, what does this do to the credibility of the liberal intelligentsia in this country? You had 14 years of Tory government and they said, these are the guys. These are the people that will sort the country out because this dude has a nice haircut, this lady has a nice CV. Actually, maybe it wasn't as good as she was claiming. And it's going to put everything right. Or if not everything, at least some things will change the direction. Things are getting worse. Things are getting worse. Things are getting worse. There was that line, wasn't there? The worst Labour government is still better than the best Tory government. Well, Jeremy Hunt gave me 16 hours of free childcare a week. There was a national insurance contributions deduction for employees. I didn't agree with that, by the way, but it's a nice thing to not pay as much as you were previously. And then you have these people. I sincerely think that Rachel Reeves never would have given 16 hours of free childcare. Never, ever, ever. Never would have had the £2 cap on bus fares. Never, which they got rid of course. How can you seriously say we want to encourage people on public transport and reduce our our carbon emissions to move to a post-carbon economy, and we care about public ownership, and we want to take on social isolation, and we want to reinvigorate town and city centres. But this one thing, which was getting people on buses, and we know that, there was a ton of data, we're going to get rid of it. And the whole thing about who could have seen this coming, we did. We did. I wrote an article for Novara Media in 2023 saying there is zero difference between Jeremy Hunt and Rachel Reeves in terms of their spending plans. Zero. Rachel Reeves is saying that if there's growth, I'll do X, Y, Z. If there's growth, there is no growth. In fact, the growth projections they were talking about, they were relying on, are about to be downgraded. Hence, we're getting this austerity. Hence, we're getting these cuts. And that's not the end of it, by the way. Because the country doesn't have a growth model. It hasn't had a growth model since the global financial crisis of 2007-8. But again, that wasn't a conversation that either these people, Reeves and Starmer, were willing to have, or in fact, the liberal intelligentsia. Serious people that were backing Labour, backing Corbyn, were saying, look, you don't have to like the guy, you don't have to like momentum, you don't have to agree with everything, but the diagnosis here is that the country hasn't had a growth model since the global financial crisis. What do we do about it? And the response from the Labour establishment and this country's liberal media class was to talk about haircuts and credibility and competence. And in less than 12 months, that has entirely evaporated. Quite extraordinary.
See, the fundamental problem here, I agree with a lot of what Aaron has said here, but the fundamental problem here is that people do not vote for policies. That's the problem. People do not vote for policies. They vote, in a sense, what Aaron was saying here about haircuts and nice CVs. People vote for personalities. See, when it came to 2024, people, and I keep saying this, I keep reinforcing this point, it was not a vote for Labour, it was a vote against the Tories. People did not come out and say, I'm going to vote for Keir Starmer because I like Keir Starmer. I'm going to vote for the Labour government, a Labour government, because I like the idea of a Labour government. Some people, yes, a significant number did do that. But the vast majority of people who came out and voted were voting against the Tories. This is a massive problem. This is the reality, but this is a massive problem because, as I keep saying, people should be voting for policies. What are your policies? But Labour didn't actually have to roll out any policies because they knew that all they'd have to do is say, look, we're not the Tories. They could ride this anti-Tory sentiment. In one of the live streams, I showed a clip where somebody was talking about Nigel Farage. There's a by-election coming up, and somebody said, I'm going to vote for Nigel Farage, or my friend is going to vote for Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage is not running in the by-election. This is the problem. In 2019, so many people said, I'm going to come out and vote for Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson was not running in every constituency, only in Uxbridge. But people said, I'm going to vote for Boris. This is part of the problem. People should be voting based on policies, not on personalities. They should be voting for parties that represent their interests as opposed to voting against parties that don't. Now, politicians take advantage of this. The media take advantage of this. Instead of talking about policies, they talk about personalities. Instead of talking about what's important in society, they start talking about what somebody else is doing at the weekend or some fluff piece on them. People should be convinced to look at manifestos. They should be convinced to look at the detail of policies and how those policies are going to impact their lives. And then they should demand that political parties are held to those policies. We can complain about the media. We can complain about politicians. But the fundamentals of politics are broken. And I keep saying this as well. When the next election rolls round, people are going to either vote for Labour or against Labour. Labour Party maybe understand that. But it will not be a vote generally in favour of the party if people are not happy. They will vote for someone else. They will not be voting based on the policies of Nigel Farage or policies of the Tories. They'll be voting to get Labour out if they're not happy. And then they'll probably end up with something worse. And then the whole cycle will begin again. So something has to break that cycle. People need to take a step back and say, okay, are these policies in my interest? Demand to know the policies. Instead of just voting for reform, ask reform. What are your policies on the NHS? What are your policies on childcare? What are your policies on everything, on the economy? These are important questions to ask, because if you don't ask them and you just vote for them, then you don't get to complain after about why they did something or didn't do something. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.